Thank you for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock.
Welcome back to Broadway Drumming 101. My name is Clayton Craddock, and my guest today is Joe Choroscewski. This is part 2 of my conversation with Joe, and we'll continue the conversation right now. When looking for opportunities, because I'm sure you've had people reach out to you when you've had your own show.
Yes.
And there are people that ask you to come in to watch or ask you for opportunities for them to sub for you. What are some things that people should do, and what are some things that people shouldn't do when contacting someone who has a chair on Broadway?
I have opinions on this, and I try to keep a positive outlook on this, because I realize not everybody knows, and so I don't want to say things that would like make anyone feel bad or self-conscious about like how they may have accidentally approached someone or approached someone when they knew less about how to do things. But there's a certain protocol that I think is appreciated and expected maybe by those who are familiar. Like, yeah, I guess there's a certain protocol, let's call it, in which that you can approach somebody in a respectful, humble way. Like, obviously, arrogance is off-putting. I think to have the thing to have is an understanding of your place, in that, especially someone who doesn't know you has no obligation. They don't owe you anything. So, start with a baseline of that they don't know you. So approach someone in that way, which in a more humble way, with no assumption that because you're contacting them and because you think you're good, that they'll of course have an opportunity for you. You have to have the understanding, especially if a show is already on its feet for any amount of time. There's a good chance that all the places that are available for someone to sub are filled at the moment. And it's very unlikely that at that moment in time, when you got in touch with them, that there's an opportunity for you, and that they would even consider you, as opposed to someone they already know about, someone they're friends with, someone that the musical director recommends. So I think having a place of understanding of what your potential place in this equation is key. So if you approach someone kindly, respectfully, and with zero expectations, that is a very good professional way to go about it. It's of course, you can certainly say, I'm interested in subbing, I'm looking for some sub work. You can be upfront about that. You don't have to be, I would always find it strange if someone would come to watch me when I had my show and would try to like sneak it in there that you don't have to do that. I think it's pretty, unless someone states otherwise, like unless someone's like watching for different reasons, like, oh, hey, I'm a percussionist, I just want to see how a drummer does. Like that's, I've had a few watchers like that where it wasn't somebody who was seeking to sub for me or that kind of opportunity. It was just someone who wanted to see how this particular show is done. Sure, I'd have those watchers. Like, yeah, someone who might be a percussionist and wanted to see, oh yeah, how does a drummer play the show? That was cool. That was more of like a shared educational experience. So not everybody watches for the same reason, but otherwise, you can probably safely assume if someone's like new or in the scene or a younger person, that they're probably looking for subbing opportunities. You don't have to kind of like be sneaky about that. That feels kind of disingenuous in a way. So it's okay to state that you're looking for sub work, and then have the understanding that good chance it's not available for you right now, but the best thing you can do if the person you're contacting is open to it is meet them and have that experience. Watch them play that show in person. And then that person knows who you are. You've had a face-to-face conversation, you have face-to-face recognition of each other. It's not just a name on an email anymore. It's a shared personal experience. Does that answer that?
Oh yeah. So you started subbing at different places. How'd you get into The Lion King?
The Lion King was something I guess I was seeking out for many years, because I'm close with Tommy Igoe. I knew him since I was a teenager, and I had been studying with him privately. I started studying with Tommy actually when I was in college, when I would come home on holiday breaks. He lived in New Jersey at the time. So I would have my North Texas thing, and then when I'd come home for holiday breaks, I would go to Tommy for private lessons, and it was a completely different experience and amazing. I will tell anybody he is one of the greatest drum educators, one of the greatest teachers that's ever walked the instrument. He's an amazing teacher. So I've known him since I was a teen, and it was just and I always knew I always thought that would be cool. I would love to sub the Lion King for Tommy. I watched him play it in the pit when I was 18. I came back from college one summer and I watched him, and that was fascinating to watch him do his thing and lead the way he does. And it was just a matter of time of when I guess when he felt I was ready, and when there was an opportunity of an actual like a sub vacancy where I could get in there. And when the time came, he actually did push me to come in pretty quickly. I had the materials for a while, but there was he didn't really need anybody. Like, he let me have a copy of the book, and I made a recording, but I guess I loosely worked on it, but I knew there wasn't an immediate opportunity. So then when early in 2010, when that opportunity presented itself, when there was a sub vacancy, that's when he had me really get together in about 3 weeks. And actually, interestingly, that was also already in the context of playing Avenue Q. So that was the first Broadway show I subbed while playing Avenue Q. We can get into that. That's a business model that I learned from you, actually. The sub out of your off-Broadway show to play a Broadway show.
Yeah, well, talk about how you got Avenue Q.
Well, did you want me to say any more about The Lion King and Tommy, or just
we'll get back to that. But
okay.
So tell me, after subbing around in the mid 2000s,
yeah, and later, yeah, the road to Avenue Q, it was went like this. I had been in Michael Kreuter is an amazingly kind person and a excellent musician, not just a drummer and percussion. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and he's a producer. He's really he's that excellent combination of a kind, warm personality and talent across the board. So that's the nicest I can say about Mike Kreuter. And he was the original drummer of Avenue Q on Broadway. And he's another person I had been in touch with for a while. He knew I was interested, and we would keep up about it. But I guess it was the same thing where there wasn't a sub vacancy for a little while. But he knew I was right there, and he was receptive to keeping me in that information chain. And then in 2007, there finally was that opportunity. So that in the summer of 2007, I put in a lot of time, and I got that book together and went and subbed Avenue Q on Broadway in the summer of 2007. And because of my availability, I admittedly wasn't doing all that much else at the time. I was very available, and he was at a busy point in his career where he had a lot of dates. He had to be out for a lot of things. So for the last 2 years of the run on Broadway, I was in there a lot. I was saying yes to every call. So being available is a great key thing for a regular to have a couple subs who they know and not just somebody. And it's one thing when it's like the person who's available is not necessarily the person everybody wants in. That's kind of a sticky situation. Like, oh, this person's always available. Yeah, do we really want him in? I was fortunate that I was doing well there. I was well liked, and I was available. So I was in there playing Avenue Q constantly the last 2 years of the run, 07 to 09. And that was very, you want to talk about positive experiences that you could have subbing on Broadway. Anybody who had the experience to sub Avenue Q on Broadway at the Golden Theater was treated to a rare, fun, positive experience. It was just, it was the atmosphere of the room. That's all I can say. And that started from the top. That was Gary Adler, the great Gary Adler, the music director. That was the mood. He set that. So anyway, I was a very successful sub there. And then September of 2009 is when Avenue Q closed on Broadway. And I was away for a couple of weeks. I was covering a few weeks of the Monty Python Spamalot national tour out west. They were like between drummers and percussion, so they asked me to do a couple of weeks. So I was in, where was I? I guess I was in San Diego. I was in San Diego, California that night. back in New York, Avenue Q closed, and there was a surprise announcement that the producers made a surprise announcement on stage that instead of closing, that Avenue Q would live on as a smaller production in an off-Broadway theater. It was the first move of its kind. Like, instead of killing a Broadway show, put it into an off-Broadway theater to run on a smaller budget and see how. And it was like, basically an experiment, I think, but no one knew how that would work. So I immediately sought that opportunity, and I was like, I need to do this. So I was in touch with all the powers that be, and a few. So first, I assumed he might want to do it. Wasn't sure. He wasn't sure. He kind of chewed it over for a week or two, and then he ultimately decided he was too busy, had too much going on, did not want to do the off-Broadway version. Which for the regulars, that would mean doing your same gig for less pay. Off-Broadway is a smaller pay scale than Broadway. But for someone who has nothing going on, a regular show is a regular show. It was a great opportunity. So a few weeks later, while I was still out west playing Spamalot, I got the call to take Avenue Q at New World Stages off Broadway, and that started immediately. There was no lag time. It was like, oh, we're going to do this next year. It wasn't like that at all. It was like, this is happening right now in 3 weeks in October of 2009. This is going. So I was thrown right into that. So that's how the Avenue Q off Broadway gig came about. It was a result of subbing for a few years and being well liked by the powers that be.
The set that you had there was your drum set.
I was told to provide everything. They decided to not do a rental or have a show, buy the kit. It was a bring your own stuff situation. So I had to quickly purchase a lot of gear that was show specific.
Was that a brand new drum set back then?
No, that kit was actually, and I did a quick and exhaustive search for drums. That I was specifically looking for a kit that had a 20-inch bass drum. I liked playing that show with a 20, and I had a few kits at the time, but none of them was a kit with a 20 that I wanted to leave parked in a theater for who knew how long. So I was looking for a kit that I could, and it just so happened there was a kit at a Guitar Center, pre-owned. It's not there anymore, in Larchmont, New York, in Westchester, and there was a Yamaha Oak Custom kit that had a 20, 10, 12, and a 16, a bigger floor tom. And then I looked online and I found a couple matching floor toms that were smaller. A drum store happened to have a 15 that matched that finish, so I bought that 15 separately. So I assembled that kit by getting the used kit from Guitar Center that had a 20, 10, and I bought the 15, which was a size I always loved, from a random music store somewhere online that happened to have a Oak Custom 15-inch floor tom. So that's the genealogy of that kit.
Well, getting that kit in that area where you performed for so many years, how in the world did you have to bring it up there, or did they have people put it up there for you? Because the drum set is in a very and the pit is in a really interesting location.
It was a makeshift room. It was a loft above the stage that was converted into a room that was never really a room. No, everything came in and eventually out the New World Stages office. The door you'd walk through in the back.
Really?
So I really, because it was on that same floor. So I just wheeled it in through the office, opened that door, and that's how I let it in. And nothing ever came up and down the stairs.
Oh, okay. Now, that makes sense now.
Yeah, that would have been insane. So people would have been injured. Drums would have been damaged.
So you got your first gig and you got steady money, and did you feel that you got to where you wanted to be professionally? I mean,
I was ecstatic to have that gig. That gig was an absolute blessing because honestly, things weren't going well up at that point in time. This was right in the middle of the economic crash of 2008. Things were bleak for a while. In 08, 09, there was subbing opportunities suddenly got scarce. I mean, I was still playing Avenue Q on Broadway. That was great to have that subbing, but not much else was coming up. And it was getting a little dicey around the summer of 09. It was almost to the point where I might have to fill things in with some alternative employment to kind of stay afloat. So that was, admittedly, things were a little bleak right then. So that gig was it couldn't have been timed any better. And the fact that it was successful was unexpected, but also a blessing. So that was, I was ecstatic. It was just the best thing that could have possibly happened.
From that gig, did you get any kind of endorsement opportunities?
Not from that gig specifically. And I, as far as endorsements, I still haven't even gotten to where I'd want to be in terms of, I'm admittedly not great at selling myself for opportunities or promoting myself for that kind of thing. I had a very fortunate meeting and hookup. I've always loved Sabian symbols since I was in high school. And that opportunity finally came about many years into the run of that show. Actually, I'd say the catalyst for making that happen was actually when I temporarily left Avenue Q for a leave of absence, which you're very familiar with, when I went to go take over Finding Neverland on Broadway. It was around that same time that my deal with Sabian was cemented. But that came from a fortunate meeting, actually through Sean McDaniel, who just a few months before me, he switched to Sabian, and then I get to meet Andy Zildjian through him. But as far as drums, sticks, heads, and anything else, I've got none of that. So I did talk to Yamaha briefly, a connection that never went anywhere. So no real endorsements came as a result of that show, aside from Sabian, but there was a few factors.
Avenue Q, you had a steady gig and you started subbing around a lot more, or were you always subbing around a lot from the late 2000s?
Well, I at that point in time when Avenue Q Broadway closed and my New World Stages gig opened up that fall, I actually wasn't currently subbing anywhere. I wasn't currently on any Broadway books. The only show, I think, after Avenue Q closed, the only thing I was really subbing at the time was Altar Boys, and Mo was doing it at that point. You had left already, so I had to politely bail on Mo and for the rest of that run. And then, so from there, for the first few months of Avenue Q, I wasn't subbing out that much. I was in most of the time because that was necessary. It was necessary income for a while. But a few months in, winter of 2010, that's when I sort of started that machine. Thanks to Tommy in that invitation to finally get in at the Lion King. That's when I began this thing that I like to think I mastered down to a science, the art of subbing Broadway shows while you have an off-Broadway gig, which was specifically learned and inspired by you.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because you had Altar Boys in your world, and you brought me into that. Very grateful. And you would often, a lot of my calls to cover Altar Boys for you would be, I'm not sure what all Broadway shows you were playing, but I know you were playing Rent for Jeff Potter around 2008. And
yes.
So you would leave Altar Boys for the night to go play Rent, and I would play Altar Boys for you. It was really, and I learned. I was like, okay, cool. This is what you do. It's actually okay to do, if you can believe that. I know this might, to people who aren't from the scene, this might sound like shocking and foreign, where you can sub out of your own gig to go sub somebody else's gig on certain terms, and the most common way that is kind of financially speaking, trading up for the night, because a Broadway scale is just so much more income than an off-Broadway show. So it's lucrative. It makes financial sense, even to sub out of your own gig to go sub on Broadway for somebody and have one. It gets your subs in and lets your subs play your off-Broadway show. And I really maximized that technique of the scheduling. So, and I started seeking out more and more Broadway subbing opportunities came about during the run of Avenue Q. Some new lessons.
How did you prepare your first sub to sub for your show, knowing what you had to do for others?
Oh, very thoroughly. And Avenue Q was an interesting, a very unique situation in that it came preloaded with subs. The Broadway run had just closed, and I had no reason to exclude anybody. I certainly wouldn't do that. So I inherited everybody else who was a sub from McCroyder on Broadway, and I was happy to use everybody. And so that was cool. It was a little bit of an adjustment period where, like, as naturally happens, I play the show a little differently than Mike, especially as time goes by. So some people may have been playing it as they learned it, the Mike Croyer version, and whereas people who I brought in as needed, you being one of them, learned my version. It's still the same show, but in terms of like, you know what I mean, like the nuances that a specific drummer brings to a part. So I didn't need to bring it. It became necessary to bring in an additional sub by that spring due to my Broadway commitments.
Spring of 2010. You went on an odyssey of having a show and then started subbing around town on many different Broadway shows. When I was speaking to Sean McDaniel, I told him he gets the a special award for having subbing on the most shows at one time at 11.
That was insane. Yeah, he was telling me all about it back then. I was out on a cruise ship, and I would talk to him on the phone when I would get into a place where I could actually use a cell phone, like somewhere on there. And in 2003, he was telling me it was insane. And not just multiple. He was even playing multiple books on certain shows. He was covering a couple percussion books. Yeah, he was. That is freak of nature territory. Yeah.
Well, you've done a lot too. What's the most amount of shows that you subbed at one time?
My max density that I've reached, I call it, my show subbing density was actually fairly recently. It was about it's supposed to be in 2019, early 2020. I was between 2019 and early 2020 pre-pandemic. I had gotten to the point of subbing 6 shows.
Oh my God, really?
That's a lot.
Man, okay, second place award goes to Joe Choroscewski.
I tried the best I could do to even get close to.
It's not an award here, but anyway.
No, that's a great award. Yeah.
6, man. Wow. Well, you are. People had you there because you're very good and you're very versatile and you know how to do the subbing thing right, and you know how to play shows, and it's important to know. I mean, subbing is a very specific skill, just like playing a show.
Yes.
But it's such a intense thing for a drummer because the drummer is often the heartbeat of the band, and it's a lot. There are a lot of times where you're exposed and you can't really make any mistakes, and it's a pressure filled environment. So, what advice would you give? I don't know if I asked you this already. What advice would you give to someone about subbing? Like, what should someone know? Well, here's the question. What should someone who's subbing a show, what's something that they should always do in a Broadway pit?
Let's see. I made a few notes to myself. I'm trying to. It's tough to say because having been in so many different subbing situations, it's almost hard to identify as there being any one through line as like this is the always thing. Aside from the basic things that have probably been said by lots of people, are almost kind of cliche. And the one thing is, it's a balance of always be humble, understand your place in that picture. You're there to cover somebody else's gig. It is not your gig. It's, so be humble about your place there. You don't have to be like, you don't have to take that too far and like, there's a balance with that too that I could always get into in terms of like taking input from people who aren't in charge of giving you input. That's especially for younger players. That's an interesting balance to walk. But to understand your place, that you are there to serve this purpose and to represent this exact part that the regular plays, that whoever you're subbing for. But I don't want to say contradictory to that, always play confidently. So it's a matter of like humbly understanding your place, but bringing what you do musically with all your confidence. So that's a balance I've learned to walk, where you're not there to show anybody up. You're not there to be bigger than you're supposed to be, but you also need to play at your level where you understand what I'm saying? Where sometimes people can play in a way that almost seems constantly hesitant and constantly timid. That's not going to work. You have to play play like you belong, play like you know it, if you know it, and you should know it. So play like you know it, play with confidence, but humbly understand your place in that bigger machine that is the Broadway show, the Broadway orchestra.
The reason why you played 6 shows at one time, which I'm going to ask you, the reason why you play those shows is because you know what you're doing, you know how to approach it, you know how to play confidently as well as humbly, and you know what your job is. So those jobs were what? You had 6 shows at one time. Which were they?
The most recent, the cluster of 6.
Yes. That was cluster of 6. What were the cluster of 6? I like that.
And this is what led up right up to the pandemic, and unfortunately, 2 of these won't be returning, which is a heartbreaker. But so the 2 shows that aren't returning that I was on was Frozen, Disney's Frozen, and Beetlejuice. So the other 4, which are still alive, Wicked, The Book of Mormon, Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations, and Moulin Rouge.
2010, you have your show. It's running well. You're subbing around town. A quick thing about that year. That year turned really interesting in an unexpected way, because the next show I subbed after The Lion King that spring was Promises, Promises for Perry Cabaret. And that turned into a very unexpected situation that Perry fell ill that summer. He had his serious health issue for a while. I ended up playing that entire summer at that show. Oh, wow.
So I was, Avenue Q was less than a year into the run New World, and I was having to sub out entire weeks to cover Promises, Promises. And that was very interesting. And then Perry got a bit better that fall, and he was well enough to he left Promises, Promises to do the first production of Elf, the musical, for the Christmas season. So when Perry left to do Elf, I was hired to finish Promises, Promises. So Promises, Promises on Broadway was officially my chair, well, as a replacement, or technically the absence, but it was the closing October to New Year's of that year. So that was I ended up missing a lot of Avenue Q for the rest of 2010.
So that was the first time you actually took somebody's kind of a leave of absence.
Oh yeah, lengthy. Yeah, I played the majority of that run of that show.
Oh wow, that's great. Shortly after that, you did some stuff with Clay Aiken.
Yes, well that that is a direct result of my dear friends Sean McDaniel and Ben Cohn. They've been Clay's music team for years and years. Sean has toured with Clay on multiple tours. And Clay hadn't toured for a while, but I guess in 2012 his star was on the rise again for a minute, because he had done the Celebrity Apprentice with that whole thing. So he did a tour again, and it was his Christmas tour. And at that point in time, Sean was unavailable to do that tour, so they called on a trusted friend who could also play pop music. I was very, very grateful for that. And that was basically a little more than a month. Just a Christmas music tour, the Joyful Noise tour, 2012. Yeah.
You also work with Mario Cantone too.
Yes. That came about as my good friend, Matt Perry, who's an amazing piano player and probably one of the just jolliest personalities you'll ever meet, but just like an ideal personality to be around in a musical setting. He brought me into that for some one-off gigs. Mario never toured, but when he would do like a comedy show in the theater, he has a musical set as part of his then he did a show. So
tell me about this Hearts and Lights thing, the Radio City musical.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, Heart and Lights at Radio City. That was a big experience. That was a many years of time and dedication, and never to be seen, which we'll get to. Gary Adler from Avenue Q is one of my great close friend and one of my best musical connections that I've ever made. He's just I'm always thankful to him for calling on me for certain things. He started calling on me around 2010, actually, to start workshopping some ideas with the Radio City Rockettes, just informal sessions with the choreographer, and like not the full group of women, there's a couple Rockettes who are sort of like in with the creators, and they help create material. And they've always been slowly, for years, they were running these ideas to develop a spring show, not Christmas, like a spring season show. I had heard there's been an Easter show in the past. So it has a history, but like in that decade, they'd thought about reviving the idea of a springtime show featuring the Rockettes. So it started to come to fruition very slowly. Lots of workshops. They're building, basically just making a brand new show, original material with the story. And Gary kept me involved in this. And the choreographer liked working with me, Linda Haberman. She was a really excellent professional at what she does. And it was just a lot of developmental work sessions of developing this show for Radio City with the Rockettes. And there'd be workshops, and it kept getting tweaked. And I think their versions of it kept getting rejected by the higher ups. Like, oh, it needs to be this. So that would mean more workshop sessions. I guess it was maybe it was ill-fated in that way, and that it kept getting rejected and tweaked. But and then we got to the point in 2013. We did a full presentation of it in the hall, like for the corporate types, and playing. Yeah, like it was staged only with piano and those V drums, as Radio City does, V drums and piano, but like fully staged with like all the Rockettes and some featured performers and some featured singers and some featured dancers from the Rockettes. Whole big thing, giant budget, and then finally it got greenlighted. So in 2014, it was supposed to launch late March of that year. And it was a whole side workshop. And a couple other drummers had been involved also as rehearsal drummers, and also been developing it. They had an audition for the chair. Even though I developed most of it, I still had to audition for my place to be in that orchestra. And I was selected to play that production. So that was all very exciting. It was all happening. We were in the hall. We're having tech rehearsals. Tons of money was spent. There was big set pieces and lights. It was like the whole thing was in place. The show they finally settled on title. It was called Heart and Lights. It was a show with an original story that was celebrating New York City. It was basically a plot that involved New York City tourism, like seeing all there is to see around the city, but somehow involving the Rockettes also in every dance number. And it got weird. The corporate people involved, they came to see it, and they made a very, very last minute decision to not open the show, to cancel it, like days before we were going to go to previews. So it was kind of devastating. So that was Heart and Lights. The show died. It came back following year as a different thing. All the creatives were out the door. Like it was like a corporate sweep, new music team, new choreographer, just like the corporate hatchet. So I was shown the door with that whole team. So
did it eventually wound up being performed at Radio City the next year?
Under a different title.
Wow.
And with a new concept, completely rewritten. I think because of the money spent, they used some of the technical elements. They incorporated some of the devices and some of the things that they had employed. But I didn't see the show. I didn't care to. No offense to anyone involved. I had a bad taste from what I went through. I should say though, I'm very grateful for the years of work of workshopping that show and rehearsing. That was a lot of income. That was very helpful to me and my family, because that wasn't really at the expense of having to do. That was daytime work. So I was there was a period of time where I was doing well with that because I was logging a lot of daytime rehearsal hours and then also playing my show. That was a very fortunate time.
Speaking of working a lot, according to your bio here on Sabian.com, you've worked 14 shows.
Oh, as a sub?
Yeah, as a sub.
That must be the current total. I've subbed 22 shows on Broadway.
Really?
I'm the current total. Broadway subbing.
Wow. Yeah. Do you have a list of them?
I do actually. I keep it on my phone so I can remember it for like.
Yeah, let me hear. Let me hear what you've done. Is this in chronological order?
It is. Yes, it is. If we're doing this, okay. Here it is. The chronological list of shows I've subbed, and I'll just say that one or two of these maybe weren't as successful as the others. I don't want to brag and say, "Oh, I killed all of these." There's some ups and downs, but I've been at least invited back for these 22 shows. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Martin Short, Fame Becomes Me, Monty Python, Spamalot, Avenue Q, Legally Blonde, Young Frankenstein, Pal Joey, The Lion King, Promises, Promises, Sister Act, The Book of Mormon, Newsies, Wicked, Finding Neverland, School of Rock, Beautiful, the Carole King Musical, Bandstand, A Bronx Tale, Frozen, Beetlejuice, Ain't Too Proud, Moulin Rouge.
Damn, that's amazing. Wow. That's incredible, man. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a lot. It's in total, that's been a lot of hours of preparation and sometimes anxiety, depending on how difficult or.
Yeah, man. I think you've had 22 heart attacks in like 20 years, man.
At least a couple of those were so pleasant that they don't count, because they're a couple of situations were so welcoming and peaceful that I don't count them as a heart attack. They were more of that's a rare thing. So you should always appreciate when you get to work in a situation that it's actually very welcoming and pleasant and low pressure. That's a gift. That's not the standard.
So you worked on that Radio City Music Hall production for years, workshopping it. Tell me if you've done workshops, readings that were about to lead to your own show, and your experiences in those settings.
Yeah, in this category, I would admit that I actually haven't had that many opportunities. I mean, I've of course done readings and workshops, but nothing that was ever going to go anywhere, at least that it hadn't. Nothing that I felt was.
Did you feel that any of them were going to go somewhere?
I don't understand the business enough from a production sense to know what actually is going to strike, to hit that magical thing where someone wants to say, yes, I want to produce this. I have not done that many readings. I can't say it's been like a constant part of my my career. I want to. I mean, that's the one thing I'm still grasping at. Is like if I get really honest, like I don't want to spend the rest of my days only being a sub. I mean, I'm proud to sub. I'm glad I'm good at it, or at least I'm being mostly perceived as being good at it in other people's opinions. But I don't want to just do that. Like my Avenue Q was wonderful. I'm so grateful for what it was. But the career goal that I still want to attain is I want to develop a show and have it come to fruition. I mean everybody wants that, but I haven't had that experience yet, and I don't want to give up on that. I really want that experience of developing a show, having it come to life, having it come to Broadway, and staying with it, and being the drummer who gets to play it and open it and be on an original cast recording and everything that comes with that. So hasn't happened yet. I'm holding out hope, but yeah. So I the workshops I've done haven't really been of note. I've done a couple in a case where I was probably just covering for a show that someone else had already workshopped once, and then just wasn't available for that round of it. So I wasn't even like the first person in the door. That happens, and then that's cool. You get to be part of it, but it's kind of more just like a job you're doing that week or two. You're like, you might not be the drummer who's creatively involved, but you're good enough to be someone that they trust to play that version of the workshop. You know, you're not necessarily, there's nobody's entitled to anything, but you wouldn't be entitled to that gig in its future life. That happens sometimes.
Speaking of cast recordings, you're on a cast recording called Brooklyn Crush.
Yes, that was, I'll tell you about that. That's my friend Matt Hinckley, who's another one. We talk about multi-talented people. He's a keyboardist, guitarist. He plays the other stringed instruments, what have you, mandolin, banjo, and he music directs. So Matt Hinckley, a talented friend of mine, he brought me into that. That was an off-Broadway show years ago. Had a little run that had an on-stage band where the actors were the band in the show. The show was about a band. And then some years later, long after the show had gone, they decided they funded a recording. They wanted to make a cast recording of the show. It didn't used to be called, when it was off Broadway, it was called Fucking Up Everything. And the title had,
Oh, really?
It had characters instead of the F word at the top of the title. So that was its original title, but they made this recording, I think possibly for the purpose of making it available for licensing for smaller theaters and like black box theaters and what have you. Whoever would license that production, that very specific kind of show. So it was more a matter of they made a complete cast recording after the fact and instead hired some of the actors played, they had hired a professional band to fill it out. So I learned that show in a short amount of time, good enough to make that cast recording, and we knocked it out in a day. So I wasn't involved with that show in its off-Broadway run. I just had the honor of recording it for its post-life cast recording that got released.
Sounds great. Stuff you were playing on it, I'm like, wow, man.
Thank you. And a lot of that's Matt Hinckley. That man can write some great drum parts. A lot of that is on the page. He not every orchestrator, not every arranger knows how to write a drum part. As you know, you've probably seen some real insanity thrown at you. But Matt's one of those good guys who can write a drum part that logically serves the song. So a lot of it is me just like playing the style and bringing my personality, but a lot of what's played was on the page, and he's an excellent drum arranger.
Speaking of drums and drummers, Jeff Pocaro, one of your favorite albums that you didn't play on was Toto, the seventh one.
Oh, yes.
I have never heard that. Tell me more about that.
Oh, about Jeff or that album?
Both.
Well, first of all, Jeff Pocaro, it almost sounds cliche to say in this age because people say it, but Jeff Pocaro is my favorite drummer that's ever lived. It didn't start out that way. Maybe in high school, I probably had it earlier. I might have said Buddy Rich or what have you, but that was early on. As I've musically matured and listened to the music that I've listened to, and Jeff Pocaro's drumming has had the deepest emotional impact on my music listening. The connection of the drum part to song it's made a connection with my listening that no other musician has. So that's how important the catalog of the late Jeff Pocaro is to me. So for that Sabian questionnaire on that website, they asked, what's your favorite album that you're not on? And that's Toto's 1988 album, the seventh one, has just such it's not even a technical thing. It's more just like such amazing drum performances that are recorded beautifully. The album just sounds great.
Is there one specific song that if I were to go listen to the album after this interview, which song would you say play first? Oh,
you gotta play the first track. If you're Pamela, it's an up tempo shuffly feel. It's too fast to be a full on shuffle. It's just like it's a groove song that's swung. Yeah. But then Stop Loving You, These Chains. Yeah. Seriously, that album will rip your head off. Yeah.
I was somewhere the other day, and in the background, Hold the Line was on. Sure. And if you listen to that song, you'll hear just some great drumming that he does in there, and it's subtle, but it's kind of explosive at the same time. And the stuff, it's like the little things he does. It's like, holy shit.
So confident. He's 22, 23 when he played that.
Wow.
And he said in interviews that song is directly for him inspired by, or he's a bar, or he would even say he's stolen from Sly and the Family Stone, Hot Fun in the Summertime. That's that feel.
As far as, the flip side of the question, as far as what drummers should never do, I always ask, what do you think a drummer should always do when they're playing in a pit of a Broadway show?
Oh, when they're as a sub or the regular?
That's a question that other people have asked me.
Yeah.
I would say as a sub, because when you have your own show, you have your own way of doing things. But if you're going to sub on a Broadway show, what should a drummer always be aware of, or what should they always do?
I think always be aware that this is kind of a broader answer. There's no set way that the experience is going to go, because each show, particularly based on the music director and how that music director runs things, is a unique experience. So have the understanding that your experience from one show is not necessarily going to be the way things go at that show. So to establish a rapport with the music director is key, to make sure, and some are more open to talking than others, but make sure you have met this person and you have conversed at least briefly to the point where they know who you are before you go in and do it. And also, of course, be receptive to their notes. Even if in the back of your mind, you think maybe their notes are, for whatever reason, not right, suspect fishy, take the notes. Don't argue with the notes. Just like have a rapport with the conductor and be receptive to notes and watch as much as you can. Get your eyes off the book, and as much as you can watch a conductor instead of your music is a really key element to it.
What do you think the most important thing any drummer should know about being a successful drummer on a Broadway show?
About being successful on a show is that I think, for one thing, I'm learning as we're in this current era of the business as we are, is that there's no rules anymore. There's no order of events. There's no stepping stone. People come into playing Broadway shows from all different directions, all different ages. There's no one path that's going to do it. So with that in mind, the key is to have a depth of experience in music. Now, earlier on, I would encounter some drummers who kind of talked down on the idea of drummers and other musicians on Broadway, who talked down the idea of being enthusiastic about shows. Like, oh, you listen to shows? I only listen to serious music. That's you don't have to take that. Like, it's okay to like shows. I think having an understanding of shows and how the art form works, how this machine works, is actually very important. So it's okay to appreciate shows, but it's more a matter of not only to pair that with the depth of understanding of musical experience from the outside world, everything else, no matter what it is, whether it's if you have a lot of experience in gigging in bands, if you're hard rock, or like in the case of Matt, if you come from a place of metal or what have you, or if you've had a country career, or if you're very active on the jazz scene, that's your passion. It doesn't matter what it is. Any of those categories, any depth of musical experience will enrich who you are and what you can bring to a gig that's right for you. So having a life outside of show music is key, and having an understanding of music beyond shows is key, I think. And then that helps enrich what you could possibly bring to a show that's right for you to play, and have the understanding that not every show is right for you. Even if you're someone like yourself, like, yes, I'm versed in a lot of styles. Am I right for every show? No. There's some things I would tell you, don't call me for that. So you
like what? I'm going to challenge you on that.
Oh man,
what, a Hamilton?
No, I haven't played there, but I can handle that, I would think.
Tell me one show that you couldn't do.
Oh man! All right, you're really putting me on the spot here.
I seriously doubt that you can't do anything.
Okay. No, I don't have an answer prepared for that, but I'm sure. Okay, maybe. Okay, let's put it this way. Maybe there was something that was particularly very specific to ethnic music of any corner of the world.
What's that? Fiddler on the Roof?
No, that's American musical theater. I'm talking maybe something more contemporary. That's like, I honestly can't name a show that fits this description. But if there was something that required very specific knowledge of, say, like Greek or Turkish music, or something that was like,
okay.
I mean, sure, I could learn to copy it apart, but do I have a musical background and something like that? No, so it's understanding your strength, but.
Yeah,
maybe that's a poor answer, but you can also understand what your strengths are musically. Know what you can bring, and be confident about the certain feels and styles that for a fact that that's something that you can bring.
I came into music theater from the pop and rock world,
right?
And when I was at Tick Tick Boom in rehearsals, there was a lot of talk about Stephen Sondheim, and Stephen Sondheim's voice was in the show. And I can't remember if this is exactly how it went down, but I always say this to people. I was asking around, I think I asked Stephen Oremus, I was like, who the hell is Stephen Sondheim? They were like, shh. Like, don't say that out loud. So I didn't know very much about musical theater. I didn't grow up on shows, and I didn't know who Stephen Sondheim was, but I do now. And one of my favorite shows since I've gone back and looked at some of his work was Sweeney Todd. And I started getting into musicals and realized that I'm going in the opposite direction that a lot of people have gone in. A lot of people know all these shows, and then they come and they learn about Jeff Pocaro or Vinnie Colaiuta or Tony Williams through working with people in shows that have actually worked with those people. So I'm going back and learning more about musicals because sometimes I do workshops or other things that require knowledge of certain styles that I didn't grow up listening to.
Right.
And to know that history and where it comes from it adds to your musical palette.
There's always room for that. Like, people shouldn't feel excluded from doing something because they don't know something at the moment. There's always room to quickly research and inform yourself. Like, what else could you do? You can't say, "Oh, I didn't know this to begin with, so I guess I'm ruled out." That's the right way to do it. If there's something that you want to then go and fill yourself in on and research musically, that's excellent. There's nothing wrong with going about learning about any category of this art form in any order and any direction. It's all just enriching what you know. That's how I feel about it.
Just a side question: do you prefer the musicals from the golden age of musicals? I guess from the what was that book? The scene in Avenue Q where the guy was reading a book.
Oh, I don't even know if it's a real book. It's
Broadway musicals of the 1940s.
Broadway musicals of the 1940s. He's settling with his favorite book that he likes to spend time with.
So, going back over, musical theater history. I don't know if you're a big musical history theater buff.
I'm a nerd, yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
Do you prefer the musicals? It's like somebody saying, do you prefer rap music from like 1986 to 92 or rap music today? I'm like, no, give me the golden age of hip hop. Because I remember it. I was
right.
living and it's just
when
better.
It began, yeah.
So do you prefer the musicals from that era, or do you prefer, now we have In the Heights and Hamilton and Ain't Too Proud and Tina?
My answer to this is distinctive because it speaks specifically to when I was a fan of it, like when I was in high school, and when becoming a fan of musical theater was part of my life. It was the shows that were part of it, and early on, it's definitely the pop the pop British musicals of the late '80s into the '90s, that era. Like both Miss Saigon and Les Miserables were huge to me in terms of what I was into, and then. Going back, I didn't go back too far. I started getting into any musicals that were rock based. So then, like, I went and really got into the original version of Jesus Christ Superstar and that original album. And then I got into Andrew Lloyd Webber. And so, yeah, my favorite era of shows is definitely the where Broadway met pop and rock, and then in the '90s, I loved the Broadway version of The Who's Tommy, and then I loved Rent. So. '80s, '90s, and rock-based shows are definitely my favorite category.
Your social media presence, I was looking around for you. I see it's just unsaving. Do you not have a website?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. That has been a priority of this summer. My a very talented wife has web design skills that I don't have. So I had a website for a few years, and then it became defunct. It was gone for a while. So you can go check out the newly revived drummingjoe.com. I don't involve my last name. I don't want to make anybody have to spell that. So it's drummingjoe, drummingjoe.com. That is my now revived website that I've always had. Yeah.
Great.
And I have a YouTube channel that has older clips. I'll probably be adding to it in the near future. It's just mostly older clips that I once upon a time made some material for.
Speaking of YouTube, I saw you on I haven't seen the video, but you were on a video with Tommy Igoe. Yes,
that one that is definitely something I'm recognized for sometimes, being a longtime student of Tommy Igoe's. I was invited to be on his DVD, which has proven to actually be a very successful, top-selling DVD, I'm proud to say. It's his video called Great Hands for a Lifetime, which essentially is based on a warm-up routine that he learned from his father called the Lifetime Warm-Up. And it's also a complete hand technique video where he really, really breaks it down and gives people all the information and tools they know to have, as he says, great hands. So yeah, he assembled a small group of students of his who represented different levels of experience. And I was chosen to be an advanced student who is now a working professional. I was 29 when we filmed it, so I was a young professional. And that was my place. But that was a lot of pressure because I had to actually, like, if anybody was going to have to play the fast stuff when everyone else drops out, the pressure was kind of on me. So you could see me in that video really like muscling it out to keep up with him, because when he would play the most intense parts of the exercises that would have fastest tempos.
Wow. Do you have and it's right now, it's a very interesting time, and when this airs, there will be a forward movement in many different directions, but people have been doing things in many different ways and in many different outlets. Do you have anything that you're working on professionally right now, or what kind of things have you been doing over the past couple of years?
Nothing of my own. Admittedly, as far as the pandemic goes, there wasn't much for me to do musically. It's just I was in that place. I have a family, and my responsibilities in the past year plus fell definitely much more in the dad at home category. So I wasn't involved with anything that was going on in the virtual sense. But now that the world is hopefully opening up piece by piece, I'm getting some things in the calendar. In particular, singers that I work with. Excuse me. A big part of my musical career has always been working with singers, especially in the cabaret and concert settings. I do lots of cabarets and concerts. That's been a big part of what I do. So fortunately, a lot of those singers are putting things on the calendar. So I have dates with Telly Leung coming up. I have dates with Christina Bianco. She's very talented. She does a lot of vocal impressions of famous voices. That's her big skill. And I started working with Natalie Joy Johnson, and she's hilarious. So yeah, the one thing that is starting to materialize is the dates with cabaret and concert world.
Good. One last question for you. I don't think I asked this to you yet. What's the most difficult show that you've ever played, and why?
I feel like there's a few, but a couple stand out, and for different reasons. But like, I'll give you two examples of difficult. One that's difficult, but I subbed Wicked. I'm current sub Wicked, and that was a very difficult show to sub. Even though I knew it inside out. I prepared mercilessly, like with conducted video, like that. If there was ever a show that I pounded out every last ounce of preparation for, it was Wicked. And still, playing that show for the first time, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack and die. It's just that scary in the moment where it went fine. But like,
I gotta see this show, man. I gotta sit with Matt just to see what the hell this is all about. Everybody says the same thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't like oh, the music is so hard. No, because like I said, I knew the music. I could play it. It was under my hands. It was just being the difference of preparing while you're playing along with a recording you have the anchor of playing along with the performance that's already there, versus when it's you're thrown in, you're driving, and that, as you've probably been told, that show is very conducted. So it's not all just like start the click and let's groove. Not at all. There's moments of where you can groove, but then it ends, and it's very conductor based. So even though I knew it and it went fine, the experience of playing that really was a force of nature. But I'd say otherwise, the other ones, when I get to that, the hardest show, I would have to say was something The Lion King for Tommy. That was because there's just such intense drumming. That's a physical drumming workout. Especially at what I learned from Tommy back then. And there's some difficult personalities to navigate in that pit. And that's one of those places where you it's not just about the drum part. It's not just about following the conductor. There are personalities in that pit that have influence over the drummer's performance, and that doesn't make it easier.
Man, oh man. I'm going to stick with my show, man. I'm going
you stick with every minute of it. You have a good thing going on.
It's rough out there, man. Shit.
I might be exaggerating. I don't know. This is just how I felt. That's how my takeaway of. I'm sure it was.
No, you're not the only one who said that. You're not the only one who said that. Even Carter McLean, when he went in, Tommy Igoe was like, "You're not ready yet," and he had to go back and prepare even more than what he had already done.
It's tough for even if you're tough for everybody. Even if you're a great player and you're capable, it's just like that show will make you work for it, and it's humbling. Yeah.
We could talk for hours, which we've already done, and I appreciate you taking time out. And it's great to learn about your history and the 75 shows that you've subbed on. And
I don't want it to get to that number. I want to then I got to play a run of a show for 25 years. That would be
exactly. Yeah, you can get there, man. It's gonna happen. And you're out of anyone who deserves their own show that lasts for 25 years. It's you.
I appreciate that. It's kind of me to say.
Thank you once again, Joe Choroscewski. I say Choroszewski.
That's perfect. Nail it.
So don't screw up his name when you say this. But look up drummingjoe.com.
Mm-hmm. And Instagram, drummingjoenyc, and
Twitter.
Whatever I'm on Twitter, but I really stopped using it. I wasn't getting anything out of it. So that's Drumming Joe NYC.
It's a cesspool out there, man.
Yeah, for sure.
TikTok?
Not yet. Maybe never. I don't know.
And my kids are on that stuff. I can't.
My son's making some funny stuff. Yeah.
Reach out to Joe. He's a great resource. He knows what he's doing. And thank you once again, Joe. And we will talk soon. I will see you in the fall. Hopefully, we'll see how things go.
Hopefully.
And thank you once again.
Thank you, Clayton. This is awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. Head over to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page where you'll find unedited conversations that I've had with some of your favorite musicians. On the YouTube page, you're going to find bonus content that I don't feature on my Instagram page or here on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and click on that little bell at the top so that you'll be notified when a new video is uploaded. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for more.
If you like what you hear on the show, subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter at broadwaydrumming101.substack.com. That's Substack, substack.com. The Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter is your one-stop shop for everything you'll need to know about playing drums for Broadway musicals. When you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll learn about what it takes to be a successful pit musician with content delivered directly to your email inbox 2 to 3 times a week. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you'll have a backstage pass to the world of a Broadway drummer playing on a hit show. As a paying subscriber, you'll receive behind-the-scenes access to the life of a musician who makes a living on Broadway. You'll also be able to read every post, not just those occasional free ones. You'll get access to all newsletter issues in the archives and have an ability to participate in subscriber-only comments and events. If you become a founding member for a gift of only $75, you'll receive discounted private drum lessons, an opportunity to watch Clayton play in the pit of his show, and a 25% discount on future promotional products. If you'd like to make a direct contribution to the production of this show, you can reach us at Venmo at Clayton-Craddock, Cash App at Syncopated, that's CINCOPATED, or PayPal at Clayton Craddock. Any amount of support will be appreciated. Thank you for listening.